Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive headache for pretty much every manager and future leader out there. How and when does technology actually transform an organization? If you've ever felt like rolling out a new software system is just one giant, expensive gamble, you are absolutely in the right place.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit the tech implementation dilemma, what it means to enact affordances, the 3 types of affordances, the sheer power of shared affordances, and finally, how to achieve actual organizational change. Let's jump right in.
So, I want you to think about this question for a second. Why do identical technologies yield completely different results in different teams? We've all seen it happen, right? It's this incredibly common management myth that buying and installing new software automatically fixes team collaboration. But as you probably guessed, the reality is a whole lot more complex, and frankly, a lot more fascinating.
All right, Section 1, the tech implementation dilemma.
Look, we all know that just dropping a shiny new tool into an organization rarely changes how people actually work. Simply deploying it does not magically alter behaviors or work structures. You can spend millions on a state-of-the-art system, but it's kind of like buying a treadmill, sticking it in the office break room, and expecting everyone to instantly get fit. It just doesn't work that way, and it certainly doesn't change the informal advice networks. The actual on-the-ground ways people seek help and get their jobs done.
To really unpack this, we're drawing from a fantastic deep dive study published in MIS Quarterly by researcher Paul M. Leonardi. He watched automotive crashworthiness engineers adopting a new simulation technology called CrashLab. Get this, 2 identical groups of engineers were given the exact same software. But continuous use of this tool didn't guarantee any shift in their informal advice networks. Just having the software sitting on their desktops changed absolutely nothing about their organizational structure.
Which brings us to Section 2, enacting affordances, the catalyst.
Okay, we need to talk about the behavioral side of things, specifically this fundamental concept of an affordance. Let's bust a myth right now. An affordance is not just a feature boxed into the software, like a button or a menu. It's actually relational. It's what the software allows a specific user to do based entirely on their unique needs and goals. The exact same piece of tech can offer completely different affordances to different people. It's like a block of clay. It all depends on what you want to sculpt.
And that brings us to the most important word in this entire explainer, enact. Affordances don't just sit there waiting for you. They literally come into existence when an actor uses a technology in a specific, intentional way. Users actively create meaning and capabilities through their interaction with the tool. So you don't just use a feature, you actively enact an affordance. Because organizations are made up of so many different people with totally different goals, one single software rollout can spawn a massive web of distinct, enacted affordances. Leonardi explicitly points this out, noting that the possible numbers of affordances that can be enacted when different individuals use technology is very large. You could literally have 10 different employees using the exact same software program to do 10 completely different things, enacting 10 unique affordances.
So how do we make sense of all these different uses? Let's move to Section 3, 3 types of affordances.
Leonardi breaks this down brilliantly into 3 distinct levels: individual, collective, and shared affordances. This framework is absolutely crucial because it shows how a technology's impact can range from basic personal productivity all the way up to totally rewiring a company's network.
Let's start at the micro level. Individual affordances. This is when one single person enacts a use that benefits them, but it isn't available to or used by the rest of the group. Maybe it makes one employee a bit faster or grants them some unique status because they figured out a cool software trick. But here's the catch. It doesn't change the team's dynamics or how the organization functions as a whole.
Stepping up from there, we really need to contrast collective versus shared affordances. Collective affordances are essentially about unity in diversity. Picture highly specialized team members working independently. They enact different individualized affordances, and then their separate tasks are pooled together at the end to achieve a group goal. But shared affordances? Totally different ballgame. This happens in reciprocally interdependent teams, teams that constantly rely on each other. Here, all members of the group must share the exact same affordances. They have to use the tool in the exact same way to coordinate closely and build shared meaning.
If you're going to take a mental screenshot of anything today, make it this matrix right here. Pay close attention to that organizational impact column. Individual affordances, no network change. Collective affordances, limited network change. But look at that bottom row.
The ultimate goal for interdependent teams absolutely must be the shared affordance. That is where collectively constructed meaning happens, and it is the only real path to a high degree of organizational network change.
All right, let's dig into why that is in Section 4, the power of shared affordances.
The research makes this incredibly clear. Organizational change is most likely when shared affordances emerge and are actually enacted. For teams that rely on reciprocal interdependence, meaning they literally cannot do their jobs without constantly passing work back and forth, enacting a shared affordance isn't just nice to have, it's the absolute key to success.
When a team converges on a shared affordance, powerful things start to happen. First, it provides collective access to new information. Everybody is looking at the same data in the same format. Second, it shifts communication structures holistically. Third, and this is huge, it fosters collectively constructed shared meaning. And finally, it generates widespread collective action. By converging on how they use features, the entire group gains a massive new shared resource. This permanently alters their advice networks, changing who they talk to and what they talk about.
We can actually see this theory in action if we look at the data from Leonardi's study of the AutoWorks engineers. Take the Piston group, for example. They completely splintered off into divergent, individualized uses of the software's features. Because they didn't enact shared affordances, their use eventually just faded out, and their organizational network remained completely unchanged. But on the flip side, we have the Struck group. They converged on a shared set of features. They successfully enacted shared affordances, which allowed them to compare their work seamlessly. And boom, as a direct result, their advice networks radically transformed.
So, what does this all mean for you? Let's wrap up with Section 5, Achieving Real Organizational Change.
If you want to prevent stalled implementations, you have to completely drop the deterministic view of technology. The tool is not going to do the heavy lifting for you. Instead, focus heavily on user behavior and this concept of enactment. You must actively foster environments where your interdependent teams converge on how they use features. Remember, if your team members are highly dependent on each other, their tool usage has to be shared in order to alter those informal advice networks and actually improve productivity. Ultimately, the how is infinitely more important than the what. Meaningful organizational change requires a critical mass of users interacting with the technology in a unified way. Bottom line, if technology use isn't shared, the network simply will not change.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to chew on before you hit deploy on your next big software investment. How are you going to ensure your team enacts shared affordances? Are you just dropping a tool on their desks and crossing your fingers? Or are you actively guiding them toward a collectively constructed, shared way of working? Keep that front of mind, and you'll be well on your way to mastering true organizational change. Thanks so much for joining me.